Hello, and thank you for joining Helaman's Army today. Today I've got a guest, a collaborator, Kevin Weisenberger. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, how's it going, Cliff?
Good. Great.
All right. My name is Kevin. I am an elder in Israel, and welcome to this wonderful collaboration between Cliff and I. We are really excited talking about the subject today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this started because we were chatting back and forth on Facebook about faith. And so we thought, why not you? It was actually you suggested, hey, let's collaborate on this and have a video about faith. So here we are.
Yeah, and I think the reason we did it is because um, as Latter Day Saints, and both of us spending a lot of time on our religion and uh, paying attention to the religious world, we see faith taking on um, different meaning than what Paul and the ancient prophets and apostles
Right.
actually meant it as. And I thought that's something we should put our two brains together and try and talk about how, as Christians and Latter day Saints, our faiths need to be defined on what exactly that is and how we can make it better.
Absolutely. And so something that I had planned on talking about, but I'll give a quick overview is that we have faith and that we have reasoning work able to work for us, and we also have observation. Those three things. And and it seems to me that a lot of people want the observation
Mhm.
and are super skeptic until you give them observation, but are unwilling to exercise the faith, which is what our conversation kind of went down to.
Yeah.
And then there are people who ignore the faith and focus on reasoning. And then there are people who are faith only and ignore reasoning and observation. And so I'm hoping that we can dig through those kind of concepts and see where they all fit together.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be really great because real faith is a rare commodity today in the Abrahamic faiths because we're getting more and more, um, I'd say, secular in our
Right.
beliefs, and so and it's sad because I've seen many good-willed Christians who they love. I can tell they love the Bible, but it's the evidence that or the evidence that they want before the faith. But
Right.
as we learn by Paul, he says that in Hebrews chapter 11, it says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." And to me, people, from what I'm seeing, is people want the evidence of the things. So they want to be able to physically see.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like doubting Thomas.
Right. Absolutely. So I don't know all the sources that you brought with you. I know that you've come prepared with a few sources. I've come prepared with a few sources. But it sounds like, based on our initial conversation we had before we started recording, that you might have a really good intro here on this. So, do you want to
Yeah.
share a few?
So yeah. So the sources that I use is mainly the scriptures and one book that I recommend to everyone. In fact, I've done it in a few videos. Is It's called the Book of Mormon Reference Companion, and I've had this thing probably about 10 years or so. I can't remember, and it's helped me understand the scriptures. And more importantly, we also have we both have digital copies of lectures on faith, which
Right.
uh, I think has Latter Day Saints is the single most important lectures outside of the scriptures that we have on what exactly is faith and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I had planned on talking a little bit out of the introduction, or not the introduction, the first lecture, which I think
Yeah,
ties right into our discussion here today. So.
Yeah, yeah. All right, sounds good.
So let me. Are you want to share one real quick, or you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to start with. Let's start with the lectures on faith because I think that's
Okay.
really the best beginning. And hopefully, I'm recording as so. Okay, faith defined. I think this is the first lecture on faith. Is faith defined? Where faith is being the first principle in revealed religion, the foundation of all righteousness. Necessary claims the first place in a course of lectures which are designed to unfold the understanding of the doctrine of Jesus Christ. So, in presenting the subject of faith, we will observe the following order. First, faith itself. What is it? And I think you had a very good conversation about that already. What is
Hmm.
faith? Secondly, the object on which it rests. And thirdly, the effects which flow from it. Then I'm going to skip down to, because you've already talked about Hebrews, so I'm going to skip down to number 11, paragraph 11 here. I'm going to highlight it so people know where I'm at. And I'm hoping we can just kind of talk our way through this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go back to this and make it a little larger so it can be seen a little easier. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. There's some great questions here in the first lecture.
There sure are. And these are the questions I really wanted to go over with you
Sounds good.
in number 11 here. So if we were to go back and reflect on the history of our lives from the period of our first recollection, I'm saying this not word for word, but as we see it. So,
Yeah.
and ask ourselves what principle excited us to action, or what gave us energy and activity in all of our lawful avocations, callings, and pursuits. What would the answer be? Would it not be that it was the assurance on which we had not, of which we had of the existence of things which we had not seen as yet? So,
Yeah.
or was it the hope? Was it not the hope which you had in consequence of your belief in the existence of unseen things, which stimulated you to action and exertion in order to obtain them? So I want to start there. So we do a lot of things. We do a lot of things in life based on faith. The concept of faith. One of those is that we go out and get an education based on faith.
Yeah.
We find something we like that we're willing to do, and we say, I want to do that for the rest of my life, or at least I want to pursue that career path. And then we go and get a degree or education or a certificate, something that says yes, you're qualified to do this, based on faith.
Yeah.
We have faith that we're going to get a job in that particular industry doing that particular thing. However, I know many folks who have gotten degrees, who have education or training in a specific, in a specific career path, but they don't work in that career path. They I know folks who have degrees in engineering that don't work in engineering. I know
Yeah.
folks who have degrees in music that don't work with music, that don't work in music education. So we have the faith. We have to put faith in when we begin that long, arduous journey to get that training in order to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you, I once, when I was working at a call center, we had a guy there who had him and his sister both worked there, and both of them had PhDs in chemical engineering.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was floored that they're not working in the field. And they said it's hard to get one because it's not that high of demand.
Right.
I think eventually they were able to get in later, but um, yeah, no one. I don't think anyone is immune from faith. Even atheists have exercised some level of
Yep.
faith. Um, One example I remember hearing years ago is your footsteps. You never know when. and when you're put walking, you never know when that last step is going to be your last step. And so you're having faith that you're going to be continue to walk step by step. And I was floored when I heard that because I'd never really thought of that concept that we don't know when we'll die. I mean, we could be walking along and all of a sudden, boom, dead.
Right. Yeah. Everything's on faith. Everything we do is on faith. Everything that motivates us, everything that pushes us, everything that we are
Yeah.
excited about, it's faith. My son did he finished his Eagle Scout a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it took a lot of work and effort to get that award, right? But he
Yeah.
had to work for an award that that he had faith that he would get,
Yeah.
right? And I there are I do know some young men who worked very hard to get to that Eagle Scout and got right close to it, and then for whatever reason it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing when you know that that your faith could be stopped at any moment. You know that your actions could be stopped at any moment. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, look at us doing our individual channels.
Right.
It took a lot of faith to start doing the videos, to start putting us ourselves out there.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely, it does.
today I just barely hit 150 people, and I was ecstatic when I saw that. I never thought I'd get that high.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, I share a lot of videos on my channel from the shorts, and that's where I get most of my followers is from the shorts, from the general conference clips.
Yeah.
And so I know that people aren't necessarily following me; they're following people they already know and love. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
That's where I've noticed where most of my subscribers are, or most of my views are on my shorts.
right, yep, just the scripture of the day.
Yep.
It works. All right, so let's go back to this lectures on faith. Um,
Okay.
let's see, where did we stop?
Um,
Would it not be the assurance which we had the existence of things which we had not seen as yet? So we talked
mhm.
about that, right?
Yep.
Was it not the hope which you had in consequence of your belief in the existence of things unseen which stimulated you to action and exertion in order to obtain them?
The college degree, stuff like that. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Everything we have to put in effort and energy to get those. Are you not dependent on your faith or belief for the acquisition of all knowledge, wisdom, and intelligence?
Yeah. We've seen that. I mean, college, you have to be willing to spend all that time doing homework, doing assignments to gain the wisdom, the knowledge, and the intelligence you need to succeed in your career.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, would you exert yourselves to obtain wisdom and intelligence unless you believe that you could obtain them? I think that's a good point. Would you put the faith and effort into something if you didn't believe that it would happen?
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine? Now, if I'm understanding correct, you spent time in college, right?
I did, yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, say you chose a different field, but you knew that you would end up failing that course. Would you still want to do it? If you had perfect knowledge that you would fail,
You
would you
know,
want?
I'm laughing. I laugh because anyone who's done the engineering program at any university, any good engineering program knows that it's a very good possibility that you might fail a course at any moment. Like you, like it is not an easy program, and it doesn't. If you've got a good engineering program, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And so you have to walk in knowing that failure is an option. You have to walk in thinking, you know what, if I fail, then I brush myself off, I get up, I do it again, and I focus on the things that I missed last time. And so the question for somebody who's been through the engineering program, and I did have a class that I had to take more than once. It's a possibility, But you know what? You do it anyway because even though it's a possibility I could fail, I still have faith that I'm going to
Yeah,
eventually overcome.
yeah, yeah. But if you have that, if you had the foresight that you would fail that class, um, would you have taken it even though you knew guaranteed you'd fail it?
Yes, yes, I would, and I know probably not the expectation that you're hoping for or that you're looking
Oh,
for,
actually,
but
no. That's perfectly good. I mean, there's
the
some
reason
people that,
the reason is because if I know I'm going to fail it, I know that no matter what I'll fail this class, I'm still going to get information and knowledge and wisdom and intelligence out of it. I'm still going to be able to have that opportunity to apply that and to gather information so that the next time through that I'm that much further ahead, that I'm that much further along.
yeah,
If I know I'm going to fail it, I probably won't show up for the final. Like I'll probably ignore that, but
yeah,
I can still get all the I can still get everything else out of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah,
So this kind of goes along the same thought concept. Would you have ever sown if you had believed that you would not reap?
yeah,
I think it's a little bit different for a farmer. Would you plant a field if you knew it was going to fail? That's a very expensive proposition for a farmer, right?
yeah. That is. I couldn't imagine, the fact that you have this. You spent hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars to buy the seed that you need to plant,
Right.
and then you plant it, and all of a sudden, I mean, right before you plant it, it's going to fail.
Yep. That's
You'd be disheartened.
absolutely. It's not. Farmers don't walk out of that and be like, "Yeah, oh, I learned something from it." No, that wasn't expensive. That was expensive, and that's a
Yeah.
make or break situation.
I think that's why Alma uses the farmer in his
Right.
lesson.
Right. So, would you have ever planted if you had not believed that you would gather? Same we just
Yeah.
talked about. Would you ever have ever asked unless you had believed that you would not receive?
You know, when I read this one, I always think to Joseph Smith.
Okay.
So when he went to the garden, he had absolute faith that he would receive an answer. Now, I don't think the answer he was expecting was what he got.
Right.
I think that he maybe had felt like maybe the Holy Ghost come upon him and tell him, this. But instead, because of his faith, he got a visitations from God our Father and Jesus Christ.
Right.
I mean
And
that,
he was reading out of James 1:5, right?
yeah,
I think to add to that, because I want to make it clear that because there's a lot of folks who will go and ask for a laundry list of things, right?
oh
Like
yeah,
we're shopping. We're gonna go. We want you to do this, and it's not about what we want. It's about what God wants for us. So in James, I want to say it's in chapter 4, verse 3. It says, and I don't have it pulled up. I apologize, but it says that basically that if we ask and don't receive, it's because we ask amiss. In other words, we're asking for that laundry list. We're asking for those pleasures that we expect, and not necessarily for what God wants for us. And
yeah,
so, if we change our thought process to gratitude, for one, gratitude, and then two, if we change our thought process to what does God want for me? What is it that you need me to have, and what is it that you need me to learn? If we change that thought process, we will see a dramatic, basically a dramatic change in the way that we view and experience our prayers, and that when we ask, we should expect to receive because we know we're asking not amiss.
yeah, and yeah. I just looked up the chapter and verse, and it's right where you said, "Good memory." But no, it's just like we see in James chapter 1, verse um, 6. It says, "Let him ask in faith, nothing wavering." In other words, there shouldn't be a doubt in your mind that you're not going to get an answer.
Right.
Because if you have any doubt, you're going to, like it says, you're going to be like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed.
Right. Absolutely. So the again, this back to this lectures on faith. It says, in a word, is there anything that you would have done, either physical or mental, if you had not previously believed? So we have to put a faith and a belief into everything we're doing uh, before we can make it happen.
Yeah,
There are a lot of things that happen at work, where I work, that we don't really know the answer to. And that's probably not something people want to hear. You're like, well, I work at a nuclear power plant, but there's some things that we just don't know the answers to. We don't know how degraded something is until we
yeah,
look at it, right? Until we can observe it. But we have to come up with a plan even before the opportunity to observe, because we're on a limited timeline, right? The more we power down, the more the more money it costs, right? When you're producing as much megawatts per hour as we do, it takes an effort to you have to put a plan together first, right? Because
yeah,
you don't want to drop 1,250 megawatts every hour for 3 or 4 days. That's expensive.
yeah.
So there was one example in particular. We had a in our circulating water intake structure, we had a pipe that was leaking,
Oh,
and we had to go in and fix it. We couldn't see it because it was underwater, right? And it was in a fairly dangerous place. We had to send divers in, so we had to come up with a plan on how to fix this leak. We didn't know anything about the leak. We didn't know where it was. We didn't know how to do anything about it. We just knew that it was on this particular pipe in this particular location, and we had no idea how big, how little, whatever. It was just a leak. So we had to come up with a plan. How do you do that without faith?
yeah. There's no way.
There's no way. So, and that's kind of the point, is that everything that we do, there is a plan. Now we were able to fix that. We were able to put a patch on that pipe that held that pipe until we were able to shut down for our refueling outage, where we took care of it completely. Just so everyone's aware, it was done.
Yeah,
Um, but it did take faith. We were dependent upon our faith. All of our exertions of every kind were dependent upon that faith.
yeah, yeah. It does. I work as an office manager, and there's things that will come up where I don't have an answer on how to fix it, and I have to come up with creative ways. And it takes a lot of faith to know that I can this can be fixed. Um, a great example is we had an employee who had done some five-finger discounting
Oh,
in the books, and it seemed hopeless that we were going to recover because we were losing lots of money, and um, it actually seemed quite hopeless that we would be able to recover. But we made changes um, in how everyday things are done. Now everyone in the office has access to this exact same stuff, so we can keep an eye on everything, and uh, we are starting to recover. And
oh, I think I lost Kevin. Well, I guess we're back on me. So since here he's are you
okay,
back now?
I'm here.
Oh, we had a buffer
Got my
issue.
audio?
Yeah, we got your yeah, we had a buffer issue, so we're back now.
Okay. But we had things come up that we would have never imagined um, come into play that now is helping us. We just started a podcast for where we work, and getting that out. So um, absolutely, we had it seemed hopeless, but everyone in the office, being members of the church, had faith that something had to do happen. We didn't
Right.
know if it would, but we had faith it would, and our company's growing now.
Good. That's great. Yeah, it's interesting how quickly one person can take you down. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop sharing and go back to just our video between me and you. I think we covered that lectures on faith, the questions pretty well.
Yeah.
Why do we need faith and what is it? Um, so,
Yeah. It's very important. In fact, not many people understand that faith isn't just faith. It's not one size fits all type of faith. There's actually several different levels of faith. And let me see if I'm going to, okay, know what page it is now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen,
sure, go
and
ahead.
we'll use the scriptures to show different levels of faith. Um, this is the one. Yep. Okay. So starting off, let's see, can I control? Okay, so I'm going to hop over there where, oops, wrong way.
So
So,
this is good because I had actually pulled this same scriptures up. So this is great. Alma 32. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Okay, so starting off, we see, where is it? Um, Here it is. Okay, so starting off, when people first start learning about God and Christ and the restored gospel, they have a particle of faith, or as Christ put it, probably a mustard seed. So that is the beginning, or you could say hope. They had a hope
Right.
of faith because hope is the beginning of faith.
Right.
And so from a particle of faith, we get to go to uh, a sufficient faith, as we see here in 3rd Nephi chapter 17, verse 8. It says, "For I see that your faith is sufficient." Okay. And then next, after sufficient faith, you have much faith in Mosiah 27:14. And each one of these is building on each other and becomes greater and greater.
Right.
Uh, then here in Alma 7:17, here you see because your faith is strong. So you have strong faith. Now, today I had was reading in Alma 58, and it's had great faith. Um, that Helaman and his stripling warriors had great faith that it'd be accomplished. Let's see, and here, exceeding faith, Mosiah 4,
Right.
chapter 4, verse 3, says that because of the exceeding faith which they had in Jesus Christ, whom should come. So this would be the next level. And then here, this is where, in between these two, is where the great faith comes in.
Okay.
And then Moroni, chapter 10, verse 11, has exceedingly great faith. Second Nephi has the final one, and this is perfect faith. So here we see that the perfect faith is probably the highest. Even God has perfect faith, and that's
Right.
something we learned in the Journal of Discourses, or not Journal of Discourses, in the art lectures on faith.
Right.
I was going to get that right.
Right.
Uh,
God must have faith in his own word, in his own actions, in his own statements. Otherwise, nothing will come to pass.
yeah, yeah. So faith is not given to us because we see something. When we see a chocolate bar, we don't have faith in that chocolate bar. If we see a miracle happen, it's not our faith that brought about, but it's a miracle because of someone else.
Right.
As the scripture and the book says, faith precedes the miracle. We have to have faith that the miracle is going to happen in order for it to happen.
Right. Absolutely.
Stop that. There we go. But um, it's it's really sad to see that faith is starting to take a second seat.
Right.
Now, there are things we can do to help increase our faith. One is read the scriptures. This is the best evidence. In fact, I got into a little discussion, I'll call it, with a atheist on faith.
Okay.
And back in 1916, Einstein put out the idea of gravity waves,
Right.
and for almost 100 years, it was only a hypothesis or a possibility of existing. No one knew for a fact that something like this would happen. Well,
Right.
in October of 2015, we detected the first massive gravity wave that was actually detectable. So almost 100 years between the time Einstein came up with the idea to realization. So scientists have, like yourself, you have the math to show something is possible. As Christians, we have the Bible, we have the Book of Mormon, we have scriptures and modern prophets. We have their word, their our math showing that
Right.
these things will happen. It's only later that we learn about the afterlife is real. Once we pass over, we'll see that it is as real as this life.
Right.
So
Absolutely. So we have to start. That's. I think that's a good point though, and it makes the point that we have to start with faith.
yeah,
Right. So we don't observe anything unless we have faith that it's going to be as we expect when we observe. We don't reason anything unless we have faith that our reasoning is
yeah,
valid. So faith is the beginning, and that's what we have to do. And as in, I'm gonna share my screen again real quick because I want to go over one verse on Alma chapter 32. Wrong one. Raised my hand. Not the right. Yeah. Okay. Alma 32. A couple verses in, starting in verse 27, is we have to
oh,
experiment on that
beautiful.
on those words, and we have to exercise a particle of faith, even no more than a desire to believe. So if we say, look, and this is I think this is different than I'm going to just take a minute and regress a little bit. The scientific method expects cynicism, right?
Mhm.
It expects criticism. It's what it thrives on. It's what it wants. The cynicism, the criticism, the speculation, the belief that it might not be there, right? That's the scientific method. Now Alma's saying kind of the opposite. Well, no, give it a chance, right? Give it a
Yeah,
chance. Exercise the little bit of faith. See if it grows into a seed. And this is what he says. Yea, even if no more than a desire to believe, let this desire work in you, even until you believe in a manner that ye can give place for a portion of my words. Now, if you will compare the word unto a seed, as we've already talked about. Now, if you give place that a seed may be planted in your heart, behold, if it be a true seed or a good seed, if ye do not cast it out by your unbelief, that ye will resist the Spirit of the Lord, behold, it will begin to swell within your breasts, and you will feel these swelling motions. You will begin to say within yourselves, it must needs be that this is a good seed, or that the word is good, for it beginneth to enlarge my soul. Yea, it beginneth to enlighten my understanding. Yea, it beginneth to be delicious to me. And so it in all things that I can think of, we have to exercise faith before we can have the observation.
Yeah.
We have to exercise faith before we can. We have to exercise faith before we can do the reasoning. And one example that I think is really kind of interesting is I don't know if you know much about Aristotle.
I know some of
Yeah.
his.
So he had this concept that heavier things fall faster to the earth because they want to be closer to the earth. They're heavier. They want to get down faster, right? So that was his thought process. So if we were to drop a book and a piece of paper at the same time, the book's going to make it to the bottom first, as opposed to the piece of paper.
Yeah.
And that's if we leave the paper open and as we pull it out of the package, the book's going to hit the ground first. And why would that be the case? Well, simply put, that we've got forces acting upwards, the air resistance. We've got all that air needs to move out of the way. Now, if we were to take that same piece of paper and crumple it up into a small ball, and then do the same experiment, they'll hit the ground at the same time. Now, if we extend that experiment and we take a pound of feathers and a pound of paper bound in a book, right? So it's a solid
Mhm.
thing. We take a pound of papers and a pound of feathers, and those feathers are all in a bag, and we drop them. We're going to see the same situation. They're going to hit the ground at the same time. But if we change the configuration of those feathers and spread them out and tie them together so that it's 1 pound of feathers tied together in a blanket and 1 pound of a book, and we let them go, the book's going to fall and the feathers are going to float slowly down, right?
Yeah.
And it's because there's much more force acting up on those feathers than there is gravity on its way down. Or not more, there's just a lot more than on the book.
Yeah.
So it'll eventually hit the ground, but the book will come down much quicker, and they're both 1 pound, right? So the point is that we can observe these things, and we can have observations and come to a wrong conclusion.
Yeah.
Aristotle came to an incorrect conclusion. He didn't drop a ball over and over and over again and determine that the gravity is 9.81 meters per second squared. He didn't he didn't
Yeah.
determine gravity through observation. He just said, "Oh, that's heavy. It's going to fall faster than that thing that's light."
Yeah. I had more desire to reach the earth.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
our reasoning doesn't always get us. Our reasoning and our observation doesn't always get us to the true correct answer, even though that's what the scientific method expects and wants.
Yeah.
Faith, sometimes we have to say, look, I believe through my faith that this is the outcome and this is the situation. This is how things really are and how things really will be. And it is simply and so I plant that seed. And if that seed begins to sprout and begins to grow, then I'll know that it's a good seed.
Hmm.
Only
Yeah.
good seeds grow.
Yep.
Bad seeds don't grow. And so, and then I can then, once I have that seed growing, then I can say, okay, what's the observation I'm getting from the seed that's growing, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's exactly what we see in Alma chapter 32, verse 28,
Yeah.
is he gives us the faith to plant the seed, and then he gives us the observation that we're going to see, and then he ends it with the reasoning, right?
Yeah.
So he says, hey, you got the faith to plant the seed, and you're going to observe that it begins to grow within your heart. And then the reasoning that you know it's a good seed is that it enlarges your soul. It beginneth to enlighten your understanding, and it begins to be delicious to you.
Yeah. And I want to point out here in verse 28 where it says that
Oh, sorry, I stopped sharing.
it's okay by your unbelief that the let's go back there on the 32:28. Here it is. Where am I at?
If you do not cast it out by your unbelief,
Yeah.
right?
So right here, if you don't cast out by your unbelief, that you will resist the Spirit of the Lord.
Right.
And we see many people who, upon hearing about the Book of Mormon or about Christ, the first thing they do is they resist it.
Yep.
They don't want to believe it.
Yes.
But that's where it's time to set aside your unbelief. Um, to tell you a
And
little more, go
we
ahead.
see the. I was going to say we see the same thing with people with the Bible as well. But
Oh yeah,
then they'll back up and they'll be like, oh, but there's archaeological evidence and this and that and the other.
yeah,
Um, well, we see the we see the same with the Book of Mormon. We've done very little archaeology in the United States and in North and South America. Comparatively, we've done very little archaeology, and the stuff that we have found does support. It's not a smoking gun that this is what happened, but it does
yeah,
support that. Hey, this very well could have been here.
yeah,
And so it's very important that we don't just throw everything out, as you're saying, just
yeah,
because we don't have that evidence that we expect or we want.
yeah,
We have to plant that seed of faith.
yeah. So I want to use example from my own life. So I remind people in my channel that at one time I was an anti-theist. I hated God. I hated anything to do with Him. I thought all Christians were nut jobs, especially Latter Day Saints, because they honestly believed that they had someone who could talk to a dead man, and that's
Right.
that's what I thought is Christ. Jesus died. There was no resurrection. There was no nothing, and you got and Latter Day Saints believe that um, you had someone who could talk to this dead guy, and I thought, and so I my first experience with faith, as I now understand it, was in high school. I met a young lady. I had just moved to a new town, to Blackfoot, Idaho, which is about the size of a pin drop.
Mm-hmm.
And I met this young lady who was a Latter day Saint. And of course, like three-quarters of the town was Latter day Saints, but she, for some reason, stood out. And I got to know her and found out she was a Latter day Saint as well. I was baptized when I was a kid. I was baptized at age 8, and then shortly after, my family went inactive. And she invited me to church, which entailed me meeting with the missionaries. And at first, I was resistant to the belief of that there is a God, that
Right.
He is actually caring, and all this. But once I set my doubts aside, I started taking seminary. Even my seminary teacher, who I don't know if you're familiar with the name Glenn Rawson.
Yes, I'm familiar. Doesn't he have a YouTube channel?
He has a YouTube channel.
Right.
He did the paper Joseph Smith Paper Project
Right.
podcast. That was my seminary teacher.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So between those two people, they helped open my eyes, remove the doubt that I had, and helped me to become what I am now. And so I my unbelief kept me from realizing the truth. And once I removed that, as it says here, bottom it says, "For it beginneth to enlarge my soul, yea, it beginneth to enlighten my understanding, and it beginneth to be delicious to me."
Yeah.
So, um, without that, I don't know where I'd be today.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
That's a
and
great story. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. That's a good story.
yeah, as I um, tell people that they need to have an open mind. Um, I've known members who are closed minded, and they believed if you were open minded, your brains would spill out. And that's just it. Faith requires an open mind.
Right. It does. It really does. So maybe we can shift gears just a tiny bit here.
Okay.
So we go from people who have no faith or don't want faith, and we've talked about that. But what about those who are faith alone and faith only?
Okay. Um, I feel sorry for them because their faith hasn't grown sufficiently. Because as our faith grows, God will start revealing things to us, start bringing things open. Um, Good example is at the time the Book of Mormon was published, there was nothing out there. We just knew that people had lived there, very little information at all. Cement was a relatively new thing, and we honestly believed there was no cement on the American continent. Well, years later, we find cement that's still strong and hard down in South America.
Right.
We're constantly seeing new things come out from our archaeology that, and people ignore that because they don't want to grow.
Right. And it's the if we look back at the again Alma 32, that once we have faith, then we can observe. Then comes the observation. And so with that faith, we start to study. With that
Yeah.
study comes that work of studying. It does take work to study, right?
Oh yeah.
And that work of studying builds your faith even more. So
Yeah.
they're like two sides of the same coin. Actually, I have a quarter right here. It's a quarter. One side's faith, the other side works, right?
Yeah.
They're the same. They work together. And so once we start putting in that work, we start to observe. We can observe things around us. We can observe the the things that the scientific method cannot observe. Right.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about that scientific method, but I'm I'm going to try to cut it out of this one. But once we can observe, then we can begin to have that reasoning. Is this good? Does it enlighten me? Is it virtuous? Is it of good report? Is it lovely? Does this encourage the feelings of the spirit? Is this peace, love, kindness, gentleness? Am I getting that fruit from this, or is this not? Is
Yeah.
this Does this send me in a different direction?
Yeah. Yeah. When we first start learning about the gospel, when we first start reading the Book of Mormon, as we study it more and more, that is studying because we're taking time to actually want to learn. We see that all the prophets are preaching the same thing. We start seeing how principles of the gospel, we learn new principles, and we see other prophets talk about these same principles. And so we're seeing all these people who have written at different times are teaching the same thing. And even with our modern prophets and apostles, we see them talking about faith in Jesus Christ, faith in the Book of Mormon, faith in the principle of tithing. That's one that I see a lot of Christians attack is the principle of tithing.
Absolutely.
And if if you just like Alma 32 says, if you just have a particle of faith that the principle of tithing is true, what are you going to do? You're going to pay your tithing for the first time. You have no idea what will happen. But then,
Right.
as you start practicing it more, as you start exercising more and more faith in it, you start seeing uh, it grow. Uh, there was a time in my life when I didn't believe in tithing, and I got a job in construction. And my mom, who, while she was inactive, she grew up in the church until her like mid 20s, 30s. I can't remember when she went inactive. But she told me, if you're going to start this, you need to do it all the time. And she said, you will see changes in your finances. And
Yep.
so I did that. And I I ended up having day labor job type jobs starting off. And I would always pay my tithing out of that. And the very next day on Monday, when I went out to look, I'd find jobs. And I kept that up until I had steady a steady job with steady income. So by practicing the principle of paying my tithing, one, I always had work every week, and eventually God blessed me with a full-time job.
Yeah. It works. Tithing works.
I
And
was
you,
actually shocked.
yeah, you get so many blessings you can't receive them. I at one time was offered multiple jobs on the same day,
Oh
and
wow.
so and that was after a very long fight, to get a job. So many blessings you can't receive them. All of a sudden, you're like, wait a second. I just went from like, holy crap, please everyone hire me, to which one am I going to pick? Like like what just happened? So it's so many blessings that you can't receive it. The windows of heaven will open.
Yeah. Yes. And this is all because I decided to I listened to the principle. And as we're told, your faith begins when you hear the word of God.
Right.
When you hear the principle for the very first time, that's when your faith will begin, because you're like, is this true? You question it, and then you try it, and you find out it's true.
Absolutely.
And if I did not pay my tithing, but just had to, oh, people say it's true. That's a particle of faith. Um, People don't want to extend beyond that, and so people spiritually do not grow.
Right. Are there any other subjects, any other sources you'd like to talk? I think we've covered it pretty well. But if there's any other subjects or sources you want to talk about with faith,
Uh, I I think right now that would be good. I think it would be good. Maybe at another time we deep delve deep
dive
delve
deeper,
deeper.
delve deeper, dive deeper.
Yeah, I'm off work, so my tongue doesn't work as well.
That's fine. I
But
stumble over words all the time.
yeah, so the subject of faith is one that we could spend hours upon hours talking about and never really scratch the surface.
Right.
The best thing I can say for people is to do as Alma 28 says, Alma 32:28. Exercise a particle of faith.
Right. Absolutely. So I
Um,
would do the same. I would encourage everyone who has made it to this point in the video, whether you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not, to do the same. To to plant that seed of faith, to let it grow, exercise that faith, and see where it brings you. If it brings you to something good, keep going. If it doesn't, then pull those weeds out.
yeah,
But but exercise that faith and plant that seed. It's not only with the Bible, but especially with the Book of Mormon. Plant that seed, and I say especially with the Book of Mormon, not because it needs more faith, but because that's where people are less willing to plant the seed of faith.
yeah,
So plant that seed, read it, give it a chance, try it out, and I guarantee you, through my own experience, I can say that the fruit of the Book of Mormon is good. And so I would encourage everyone to try it and read the Book of Mormon.
yeah. And one last thought that I had just entered my head is, there's a saying that I think you're familiar with as well, is no risk, no reward.
Right.
So if you're not willing to risk the particle of faith,
Right.
you're not wanting the reward bad enough.
Exactly. Exactly. So I've never done something this way before. So how do we end this? Do we just say goodbye? Do we?
Um, I'm not sure, but I would like to thank everyone who is watching this video for joining us. This has been quite the experience for both of us. This is a new experience. And if you are interested in obtaining a copy of the Book of Mormon, um, I know Cliff, I think you put it down in your
Yep.
description all the time. And I need to start doing that as well because I get people.
You can copy and paste it from my description. Feel free.
Sounds good. All right, Cliff. Well, I thank you for agreeing to this collaboration. I think it turned out quite well. I'm hoping we covered enough for people to begin to exercise faith for the first time in their lives.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you being here, and I
Yeah.
appreciate your followers listening to me talk. And hopefully, if you're following my channel, give Kevin a look. I'll put a link to his blog in the description. An elder in Israel. So, all right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys, and see you guys next time.